Listeners, welcome to Tales of Abundance. We have special guest Stephen Huskey here today. And I just want you to think, we have a lot of entrepreneurs in the crowd. And there's a story as old as entrepreneurship that we have the wealthy entrepreneur. They're maybe 50 years old. They're sitting in their doctor's office. And they've spent their whole life building this business and sacrificing and missing birthdays and, baseball games. And they've got this wealth, didn't take, hardly ever took a vacation. And now they're facing heart disease. They're 50 years old. And, how did they get here, right? They have a hard time. They can't sell their business. It's too dependent on them. They can't step away because everything falls apart. And our guest today can help you start thinking about and planning for some of this stuff. So, John, you were on Stephen's podcast previously. You want to give people a little insight here?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was just excited. I think exit planning is something that I think people hear the term regularly, but don't maybe fully understand what exit planning is or why that's important if you're a business owner, or certainly why you should be thinking about it in the early stages of starting a business. And I think, for I think most, I'm going to guess that Stephen's going to tell us it's never too early to start with exit planning. But Stephen, why don't you just tell us, what is exit planning? When should we start? And isn't that just something for venture capital companies and private equity firms, or is exit planning for other people too?
Thanks, Dr. Oberg. I appreciate it. I think it's important to be considering what your exit strategy will look like from the moment you start your business. We kind of come into it with a business plan or a proposal. Maybe we're looking for investors, maybe we're doing things on our own, but it's just like I consider your business like a penny stock, and you're looking to buy it as low as possible, starting it from scratch, and then selling it at its highest value to get the most out of it. You want the highest amount of reward from the amount of risk you took to start this thing. And so when I started Blue Water Dental Advisors, I thought about what's my 1-year plan, 3-year plan, 5-year plan, and when do I want to get out of this thing? Obviously, it's a moving target. It shifts a lot based on where I'm seeing the growth patterns and what my clients need from me. But eventually at some point I'm going to have to find either a successor who's already in this business or some third party who's already doing it much better than I am and wants to buy my business up for market share. So I would say it's important to think about exit planning from the day you get started, but it's a moving target. It always changes. There's many doors you can walk through, to discover the best course of exit for you. And it's important to plan with someone who deals with these things every day and speaks your language from an industry perspective too.
So where do I start? If I'm starting a business today, what parts do I really need to think about with exit planning today on day one?
I think the easiest, and I wouldn't really call it the easiest, I think the first thing you should do is really just get super organized. Who are the folks on your team who you value their counsel, that have been in this space for a while? Can you align yourself with different professionals who know you and your family and your business and your organization as a whole, and speak to them regularly, whether it's quarterly, just check-ins, but have someone in your corner that understands the business and that you can make positive ripple effects with every future move that you want to make in your business.
Is it safe to say most business owners skip it? And if so, why do you think that is?
I would say it's usually in the back of their mind, but it is lower on the priority list because it is such a future-based question that's always out there, and it's something that isn't even as close to them as sometimes retirement planning feels. And they're so ingrained in the day-to-day of the business, and they're focusing on today's problems and getting some solutions for those things than they are with exit planning. So to answer your question, I think exit planning is always around, but it's never really the main priority.
Yeah.
What are the most frequent questions you get early on with people?
Well, what is my business worth? They don't know. It's the greatest asset by value on their balance sheet, their personal balance sheet, but a lot of times they don't have any idea. They don't know. Well, for dentistry, for example, since I work in that space a lot, the DSOs in the private equity world kind of changed the game in terms of what they can receive at the exit table. It used to be anywhere from 70 to 90% of 1 year's collection in a dental practice. And now, because of DSOs and private equity, it's usually some form of a multiple of EBITDA, free cash flow with add backs, all those different things. So I think the best thing you can do to be prepared is plan for every option available to you at exit, whether it's an inside sale or a third party or a private equity or DSO. And then whenever you have an offer from something that fits your culture, fits your priorities, fits your charitable needs, you can choose the best one for you.
kind
talk a
of
little bit about
mention the
different
mul-
ages of people that are in business. You know, they assume the business has started, and you've got someone starts a business in their 20s or their 30s, their 40s, their 50s, or in my case it was my 60s. The the approach to exit planning, I imagine, is very different depending on where you are in the stage. I mean, a 25-year-old who's kicking off a vibe coding business today, and he's probably not, or she's not even thinking about an exit. They're just thinking about the yacht and the, the house in Silicon Valley. You know, to talk about the different stages of life people are in, and how they should be going about it.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think based on what age you are or what stage of life you're in, also kind of depends what you're using your business for. Is it a lifestyle business? Is it just providing you with cash flow to get through the day because you didn't want a boss, like you wanted to be your own boss and set your own schedule? Or are you really in growth mode to potentially bring on a partner? Are you in growth mode because you're wanting to eventually turn the lights off and sell this business to somebody else? I mean, the other option for exit planning is you don't plan at all and you just shut the business down, right? But I think everybody wants some type of value for the equity they've put in. So for, let's say, the 25-year-old, like you mentioned, vibe coding, I'm surprised you even know what that phrase means.
Ouch. Anthony's awesome with AI. Are you kidding me? He's like the quintessential, like old dog newest tricks. Like he was teaching me about Mythos this morning. Are you kidding?
Oh my gosh. See, I don't even know what that is, but I mean, I'll be 38 in a few weeks, and I just learned what it was last week, so that's impressive. So repeat the question to me one more time, please.
Really discussing, the thought process and the building blocks depending on where you are. Let's assume it's a business that it's not going to get rolled up by a private equity company. It's a business that for the time being is more of a lifestyle business. But you have competitors in the market that, as you said, they may come along and want to buy you for market share, or more likely, when you get to the right age, you turn it over to somebody who continues the cash flow to you or buys you out over time or something along more pedestrian than going public and at 500 times revenue.
Yeah, I think it also depends on how you feel about entrepreneurship in business. Some people, I've worked with some folks who want to start multiple businesses because they'd rather have more control over cost and cash flow than they could get from, let's say, passive income from real estate. They like to see these businesses as passive income, and they hire a general manager for each business and they run it. And they might check on the business an hour or two a week. And sometimes that's the way they want it, and they'll have 5 or 6 or 7 businesses running at any given time, usually different industry types as well to be well diversified. And then they'll pass it down to family, right? Or you got folks that are starting a new career. Like, for instance, I had a dentist who became disabled, couldn't do his job anymore, and he went back to law school, and now he has a practice that just focuses on dental transitions because he kind of had to do that in his own previous life. And so he is now making more money as an attorney than he did as a dentist, which honestly, dentists make really good money, but it's him and his dad. His dad was an attorney. They started this thing together, and now they are the foremost authority for what they do in the Midwest. There's multiple reasons why people would want to get out of the business, but there's also multiple reasons why you'd want to start one. I think it's really figuring out what I want to get out of this business. What do I want my culture to be? Do I want to support the lives of others and their dreams, or do I want to make it for a positively selfish reason? Do I just want to make this something that's going to grow and one day provide me and my family with the legacy and wealth that I really need to accomplish all the things that are important to me, whether it's buying a bigger house or supporting grandkids or creating lifetime legacy funds. There's a lot of planning that has to go in on the front end to do those things. There's also a lot of planning on the back end, like retirement income distribution planning and getting the most money out of that, reducing your taxes upon sale. What are some tax shelters that I can utilize? How can I create capital losses on my balance sheet 3 to 5 years before I plan, so that when I sell, my taxes owed at the end from depreciation recapture and capital gains are a heck of a lot less because I had the foresight to do a lot of future planning.
So if most people don't do this, and I get it. Like, I've been there, right? Like, I've been running a business, and I'm so busy just trying to keep the business alive and growing and moving to the next level that, I didn't put the bandwidth into getting the business ready for sale, okay? So I have an idea. I can look back and think of some mistakes I made, but what mistakes do you see people? So let's say you got a business owner out there, and that's what they're doing. They're just burning the candle at both ends. They're full speed forward. What are they not considering, and what should they like? What are the mistakes they make?
One of the top reasons we see people wanting to sell their business is because they're just plain burnt out. They really can't take anything else. They're like, if I get an offer today, and it's around the area that I want, I'm going to take it. And there's got to be a lot of consideration around how it needs to be structured, the professionals you want to work with. Do you want to keep the same culture? Do you want to retain the employees in that business because you care deeply for them and you want them to have a similar lifestyle and a similar structure to how they're used to working? So a lot of planning that needs to go in beforehand is, all right, what is my business value? And when do I consider that I might want to get out of this thing? The rolling period that we generally hear from people is 5 to 7 years from today. If we did zero planning at all, and I came back 7 years later and said, all right, Mr. Smith, tell me when you like to exit. Oh, 5 to 7 years. He's like, well, you said that 5 to 7 years ago, It's because they didn't do anything. But you got to figure out what's the value of my business. Who are the people in the organization that I rely on to create the systems and the cash flow that this business generates? How do I reward and incentivize those key people to stay through a growth period, to and through an exit? And can I pay them in a way that allows them to stay and feel fully compensated for all the work they've helped me with? If you can engage your employees to have a long-term perspective, but their goals and dreams are aligned with your goals and dreams, that makes for a really fluid, cohesive team. So a lot of retention planning has to happen. Protection of the business's value has to happen. What are the legal documents I have in place? What's the partnership or unilateral structure that I have in my business? If I were to get disabled or pass away today, would my spouse or my family get the same fair market value of what it's worth today? What is the entity structure of the business prior to sale? Because if you want to take advantage of a stock sale versus an asset or a cash sale, how does that impact your taxes in the future? Am I selling to my employees as like an ESOP, or am I going to just sell this thing as a cash deal to someone else? Do I want to get paid up front, or do I want a term buyout? There's so many different questions to answer before you really get into the crux of the deal. So those are some questions I think you should ask yourself, and you should write down first and foremost, what do I want out of this business when I'm done with it? And then speak with somebody who can help you speak to that better, and plan for it from a lifestyle event.
So
I think there are two big mistakes people make. Number one is they don't take into account the team as a sellable asset. Would a buyer want this group that I've assembled? That's one of the mistakes. But the biggest mistake, and Dr. John taught me this one 7 or 8 years ago, was setting a financial finish line. How much is enough? And no matter what, when you hit it, that's when you make the move. And you can see that financial finish line getting closer and closer, so you're almost naturally inclined to start doing the necessary things to be ready for that moment when you hit it. You can always push the finish line out. That's a personal preference. But those two things have to work together, in my opinion. Retrospectively, having had a successful exit, that I wasn't really thinking hard about it until John told me to think hard about the money, what's the finish line. I was fortunate to build a really good team that people wanted to buy. And it came down to a word you used a few minutes ago, culture. They aligned with my personal culture. And we tolerated no one who didn't fit that culture, within reason. No one's perfect, but
you said, Anthony, you said fortunate. I don't know if you were fortunate or really deliberate. I think there were some really hard choices along the way, right?
Sure.
So,
right.
Stephen, you've got to have a story of when it went poorly. Like, tell us no names, please, but tell us a story when you got called in, but it was too late. It was the wrong time. Like, Like, tell everyone's happy to talk about the happy story. Like, what happens when this goes wrong?
So I've got one that my business partner shares all the time, and it's a case near and dear to him. But this, I'll say that it is a dentist. She put off exit planning for a couple years. She was in her mid-50s. She obviously thought she was invincible. And in the line of work of dentistry, you've really got to be very good with your hands, and your back has to be able to hold up. However, 2 years went by. She did not do any exit planning. Wouldn't take his calls after a while, and she developed severe carpal tunnel. And so, where she had a $2 million practice, over time, because she just couldn't find the right person to take over the business, it just kept falling and falling in value. And she probably ended up getting only half of what it was valued at, because it was almost at a fire sale at that point. In South Carolina, you have to be dental licensed to own a dental practice, or at least have some ownership in it. And so that was one of the reasons why we're so adamant about getting in on the exit path. That's what differentiates our practice. Is we're talking about exit because really no one else is, especially in dentistry. But we use that story all the time because she didn't prepare, she didn't listen. A lot of physicians think they know it all, and they don't like to be told they don't know it all, which I hope you guys can understand. It's just the beast. You have to be confident to be a physician. But the fact that she sat on her hands and didn't do anything ended up hurting her hands, and so she was not able to work. And then she sold the practice, and it's doing really well now, but she did not get what she needed for that sale.
Yeah.
I read an article recently talking about this shift that's coming, all the baby boomers that are retiring that run businesses, and they haven't done the prep, right? And basically what this article said was that there's just tons of businesses being shut down right now in America because people didn't do what you're talking about. Do you see that? Could you confirm what that article's suggesting?
Yeah, I mean, there's two major movements coming from the boomer generation, and that is either a huge amount of wealth getting passed down just from personal assets, or businesses that are going to have to be transitioned. And from a failure of a lack to plan, they don't really have an idea of what that looks like. So there are certified exit planners, there are CEPAs and CEXPs like myself that you can just reach out to. A financial advisor is a really good person to talk to. If you have a CPA that's really well versed in that, I would recommend having all those different professionals on your team. And I feel like business owners, you guys can attest to this, their main source of counsel is usually from the tax end, and it's a CPA that you rely heavily on. If you have a really good proactive CPA, you're golden, because a lot of them are reactive. They just follow you file your taxes, they tell you what you owe, and then you're done. And their job is to help reduce taxes that year. But what they're not considering is what's the future impact of my reduction of tax today? Am I kicking the can down the road, and every time I kick it, is it getting larger? So if you have a financial advisor as well on your team that's saying, okay, CPA is correct in this, here's how it's going to impact you in the future, let's make decisions that kind of meet in the middle, and let's not let the tax tail wag the dog here.
Yeah, that's a big one. When they add back depreciation at the end, that's a painful one.
And every time you take a distribution, like especially from an S corporation, you're lowering your basis in the business. And so there are ways that you can continue to add basis back into the business. So if you sell for $1 million and you have $200,000 of basis, that's an $800,000 capital gain plus the recapture of depreciation, which is taxed at 25% as of today. That's a lot of tax you got to owe. And so people are trying to come up with creative structures from sale to try to reduce the hit up front for how much they're going to owe in tax.
What are the questions you wish people would be asking their advisors today that aren't like normally thought about? They're not intuitive.
What does life look like after my business? Can you model out for me, if I receive this lump sum of money, what's the lifestyle I'm going to have? I'm used to $300,000 of cash flow a year that I generate from my business. I keep the rest of my cash flow in the business. Can you model out for me, what's life going to look like? Am I going to have the right cash flow? And if not, then what's the freedom gap? What's my business worth today? What's on my personal balance sheet? How long will it last me? Because what everybody doesn't want is to run out of money and be living in their mother-in-law suite of their children's house, or Social Security is their main source of income. They don't want that. So I think it's really important to do a lot of personal planning as well up front, so you know what life looks like, and then you can hypothetically inject a larger amount of non-retirement based money coming in, and then how does that cash flow continue to come without the risk of running out of money? So there's a lot of simulations like Monte Carlos we can do. There's cash flow stimulators we can create that show what that life is going to look like. What you want is, if you, let's say you retire before retirement age, or you sell your business before retirement age, maybe you want to continue to be an entrepreneurial, and you want to start something else. Maybe you want to do that because you can, not because you have to, because you enjoy doing something.
Anthony, you remember some of those conversations about like what life was like after retirement when you sell the business?
I mean, it's you know, the industry that I was in, I'm now pretty much full-time consulting for my peers, you know, that are still in the business, and they fit all the different mistakes. You know, I have 6 of them now, and each one is making one or more of the mistakes that we're talking about. I just had a guy take a $2.5 million distribution to buy a ranch in Indiana. He didn't need the ranch in Indiana, but you know, he didn't give any thought to the implications of what that's going to be down the road, and he's probably less than 5 years away from retirement, so there's not much you can do about it. Mm-hmm. Conversely, I've got some younger guys in the East Coast, and they're like Randy said, they're just heads down. They're working. They're not adding, you know, support staff to help them get through the day. You know, they look at that as pure expense, not an investment.
Right.
Which I, you know, anybody that I talk to, you know, I always quote the Steve Jobs quote when he first got started. Someone said to him, "Why do you spend so much time interviewing people? You're too important to be interviewing people." He said, "Look, when you start a business, you're 100% of the business. That first person you hire, they're 50% of the business. And the second one you hire, they're 33% of the business. You better spend some time making sure you're surrounding yourself with talented people that are doing things that are accretive to the business." And I see from most of these guys that I'm working with, they're, you know, chief cook and bottle washer, and it just doesn't. It's not going to serve them well in the long run. I get from the perspective of an entrepreneur, it's hard to let go. You need counseling. You know, you need someone that's not in your business helping you make some decisions or point out what you're missing, because you're, as the old saying goes, you're always working in the business, not on the business.
And some business owners might not have hobbies outside of their business, and they've wrapped their entire personal identity in their title and in their business. And so whenever they've given that up, they're lost. They don't really know what to do. So I think, counseling of some sort, or I wouldn't necessarily call it therapy, but just a group of like-minded individuals you can get together and just test and retest and see what's working for them, and get some ideas, and, you know, develop some new hobbies, go fishing or pick up roller skating or whatever you want to do that's fun, and spend your time doing that. Plus, your spouse probably won't like you around in the house as often as you are now that you're not working. So go find something the two of you guys can enjoy, go travel. There's a lot of different things you can do. But I think finding that out beforehand, before you're forced to, is going to be a really important transition period.
Yeah.
A lot of exercises we take people through, and there's various ways of entering into that conversation, so that it's like, and it's years ahead of time to figure out which skill set, and because golfing, even people that love golf, only goes so far. Fishing only goes so far. And so, you know, I just read this morning an article on Charlie Munger. You know, he was working until he was 99. Like that, like, now for me, I love what I do for work, so that sounds amazing. I know some people that don't love the work they do, so that doesn't sound so amazing. So I think you got to find out, figure out what does sound amazing. I remember talking to one patient in our medical clinic who, what was amazing was teaching kids who were underprivileged how to read at the local library. Like, that was amazing. And so he's got to figure out what amazing looks like. I think that's such an important thing to do.
You're right. A lot of people, they do focus back on the causes and cultures they really care about, and so they do get more charitably inclined. And there's just some things you can use your time versus your money to help these organizations out, or maybe even start your own and do something that's near and dear to you.
Yeah.
Do you have an example? Really, I'm just drawing on past experience because I've made this mistake. But do you have example of somebody who, they had a great business and it was throwing off cash, but the books and the record keeping was a disaster? I'm assuming this was a big problem, and therefore the business was unsellable.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
And they were running everything personally through the business, and so it made a huge issue. And your CPA tells you every year, stop doing that. You got different credit cards. You need to start using them. And once you kind of pierce that corporate veil, it's really hard to stitch it back up. And so it's important to delineate what's what. And I'd say having a really solid bookkeeper and a really solid certified public accountant and a really solid financial advisor, a really solid banker, people who are in your corner. I think it's important that they all speak the same language. They all know you well. They all commiserate together. They all meet in a room without you and talk about the business and what's important. And if they're all aligned, then it just makes your job easier, where you can do more focusing on the business itself and focus on what's important in the business versus being inside of it, trying to make sure it just stays afloat. You can work on the business more often. So like, for instance, my business partner and I, we have a work on the business day every month. It's the first Friday of every month. And all we do is we shut out everything else. We turn our email off and we focus like, well, where do we want to be next quarter? Or what do we want to do in the next year? And what are the things that are going to prevent us from doing that? And how do we eliminate those distractions? And once we figured out where we want to go, things become more clear as to what to implement or what to take away. That's going to help us achieve our end result.
That's a great one. Love that. Once a month, just hack the business, like go work on the business.
Exactly.
Amazing. So give us go ahead, Randy.
Oh, no, go.
Give us a story of like someone's gone out there, they maybe exited their business early, and then take us through what they can expect once that's happened. Let's assume they did the hobby building, they did the right stuff. Like, what does life look like on the other side for people that haven't acted? And what are the surprises they face?
That's a great question. So you're saying they've done all the proper first steps?
They've exited. Yeah, they had their exit. You watched them exit. They were able to sell their business. It wasn't time to retire yet, maybe. They're relatively young. I say relatively young, I mean 50s, because that's, I'm relatively young.
Yeah, from the one example I can think of was a restaurant owner, and they had multiple restaurants, and then they sold. What they did is they figured out, okay, I've got this lump sum of money. So number one, money is no longer really a concern, and so they were very protective of their time versus their money, and they did have some kids in college. They were present at every sporting event. They could be more valuable to their peers and their family. They were able to give advice. I feel like if you have all that structure already put in place, you can follow the route that's most important to you. So they did start their own foundation. They help kids with learning disabilities. And so now they're spending time figuring out, what do these kids need? Where are they located? How can I take myself to them and be proactive in planning for them and helping them, with either reading or writing or, giving them the tools and resources they need to be successful. So that's what makes them happy, and that's what they decided to do. And then if they have an investment opportunity that comes up, they can take advantage of it. They just reach out and say, hey, I've got this opportunity. What's the best way to structure this so that I can take advantage of it? And then, by the way, what's my exit from this opportunity when it comes up? They started, developing some multifamily properties, and they really enjoy that. They're a good landlord versus being one that's kind of a slumlord, which is, they're taking care of their people. So because they've been on the other end of it, and they have a positive outlook on life, and they have, charitable type of attributes, that, they can be a much better person, and because of what they learned in business ownership.
Any big surprises on the other side for people? Any things that that shock most people when they get there?
I think it's kind of, they are a little shocked at how lonely it is, because they spent so much time in their business and their lives were wrapped up in the people inside of the business that they, don't have as close relationships with friends or family, and so they have to rekindle those friendships. So the loneliness is one of them. That's a negative surprise. A positive surprise would be how easy it is to make better decisions, because they've seen what good preparation looks like. And so they have a whole, 5 tiers or 5 questions that they pose for every opportunity that comes up, and they can make good, solid decisions because it fits X, Y, Z. So that's a positive surprise, I believe, from that.
So let me ask you a question. Don't take this the wrong way, or take it the wrong way if you want. So a lot of entrepreneurs are slightly older than a 38-year-old
Yeah.
whippersnapper, right? So what's if you're younger than my son, so if you had come into us, John and I, back when we were looking to do it, how do you bridge that gap? Is your partner older? Can you share, not with us necessarily, but do you share your historical work that you've done? So how do you overcome the age gap? And
It's a great question. I mean, when I was 25 starting in this business, it was a lot of self-doubt, a lot of head trash that, oh, these people with a lot of money aren't going to want to work with me because I'm so much younger than them. I'm probably, younger than their children. But I think it has to do with the confidence, sharing success stories, but also sharing some stories of what didn't go right and why, because a lot of people can relate to those things, right? And so if you're sharing something that hits with them, they're gonna trust you, they're gonna know you, they're gonna like you. And if you have those three attributes, then you can overcome the age issue. Also, I've got 3 young daughters at home, and I've got more gray in my beard than I did last year, so I think the grays help a little bit.
yeah.
I also am continuously studying and learning new things, which is why I continue to add alphabet soup to my name. I've got the Certified Financial Planner designation. I've got the Certified Exit Planner designation. My business partner, he's 5 years older than I am, so that helps. And he's a retirement income certified professional. So we've got a lot of the things that speak to our industry and our type of clients that we want to work with. We've got all of those certifications, which is the gold standard, and also helps build trust. It makes us a little bit more marketable. And really, it's doing good work all the time because you want to be relatable, you want to be referable, and you want people who've worked with you to introduce you to folks just like them. And so if you get a warm introduction or a handoff like that, they trust that individual already, they're going to give you an opportunity to present your case.
Okay. Let's shift it a little bit. I got a question that I can't go back on, but you've got this entrepreneur, he's done a lot right, or she's done a lot right. The business is going to produce the financial finish line they want. When I sold out, I got approached by a bunch of financial advisors with every tax scheme on the planet to bury the capital gains. One of them had to do with, I think it was, I gave all the money to a charity and then I borrowed the money back and it was all tax-free. What's your take on all that? Should you issue a warning to the entrepreneurs that are listening right now to these things? Because it was very tempting. It was multiples below, the cost of doing it was multiples below what we ultimately paid in taxes.
I think as long as the individual that you're speaking with understands the tax code, there are new strategies that raise red flags within the IRS consistently. There's Delaware statutory trust, there's CRATs, there's CRUTs, there's GMATs, there's all kinds of different things, or GRATs. There's all kinds of different things that are out there. But really, you should understand them inside and out. The person who's explaining this to you should be able to explain, how they've done that in the past and what's worked out for them. What are some red flags that might generate by using the structure or strategy? That's why it's so important for me to have such a good positive relationship and a proactive one with my clients, because you're right. I mean, a year into someone getting ready to sell, they're getting hounded. And so if I've already done the work and luckily, I haven't lost a client when they have sold. They haven't taken it somewhere else, and I've been able to manage those assets because I've done a great work up front. But you have to be proactive. You have to be able to share things proactively with people, which is why, if I get a question from a client that I do know a lot about, but I write a blog about it right away. Because it's like, okay, if this person's thinking about this particular strategy or heard something online, I probably need to write about it either to dispel some myths about it, to share how it works, but also it helps with SEO and people finding me online. If I have that content out there, it means I'm somewhat of a specialist in that area and I can speak to it properly. So you have to be proactive and you have to have a good relationship with people, especially as you're getting closer to the sale. So I'm assuming because you already had a relationship in place and those people were on you, you might have been bringing some of these ideas to your folks and saying, hey, what do you think about this, and seeing what answer came up with. Well, you have to have someone on your team that's not a yes man. Mm-hmm. Someone that's going to say, I think that's a dumb idea and here's why. Or, hey, I think that might actually be a really good opportunity for us. Let's explore that. Let's model it out and see how it works.
Yeah. We had a guy that just said, yeah, no, not gonna support that. So not that it was he thought it was illegal, it just was untested. It was untested, and he said, do you really want to, 5 years or 3 years down the road, pay that piper, because the piper is going to be bigger than the pipe right now in a big
Yeah.
way, because there'll be fines and interest and all that stuff. So we swallowed hard and just wrote the checks.
Yeah, there's no such thing as there's tax avoidance, but there's not like getting rid of tax. Like
Right.
it's gonna come at some point. So when is it most advantageous to just pay the piper, go ahead and get it out of the way? Either you're gonna realize it, or someone in your family is gonna realize it, and it's better that you do it if you feel that way, versus someone who might not have as much money or control as you do is gonna have to pay for it at some point.
I want to circle
Right.
back to valuations and to simplify it, right? I know there's lots of ways to value a company. There can be cash flow, there can be multiples of EBITDA, there can, asset sale, etc. Let's just say, I think most business owners historically hear like a business is worth 3 to 5 times cash flow. But then we've all seen businesses or people that either can't sell, so that's basically 0 times cash flow. I mean, other ones sell for 70 cents on the dollar for 1 year, but then other businesses do go for 3 to 5, and other businesses go for 10 or maybe even 15. What is the difference in those businesses, right? Like
It's
Yeah.
really industry specific. Is this more of a service-based business where revenue is more recurring, or is it like transactional? Like you're not going to find a realtor who's going to be able to sell their client base, for anything that's worth, because that's the relationship they have. So also, can you remove yourself from the business for 3 months and it still holds its value? Can you go on, can you go to Bali for a while and your business still runs? That means that you've got a really good operation, you've got a really good core of people. That's why it's so important to retain the organization key people. Because if you can retain them inside of the business, I don't like to call it golden handcuffs because no one likes to be retained, but can they be rewarded and incentivized to remain in the business to keep it going? And then the people who buy the business can reorganize that structure or replicate it at some point. But it's very industry specific for how they sell, whether or not it's 70 cents on the dollar or 5 times EBITDA. I mean, tech companies are going for a lot more because that's just where the value is right now. And really, you just got to consider your business is only worth what someone's willing to write you a check for it.
Right. This is out of left field, and if you don't have an opinion on this, this is okay. But a couple of weeks ago, the three of us discussed, there was an article by Chamath, I can't say his last name, where he was talking about these big valuations on public companies are going to come down because of AI and how fast, and it's ridiculous now to be able to predict revenues 25 years in the future, that it's just too hard in today's world. Do you think that's right? Do you have an opinion, or I don't know if you happen to see that article?
I have not seen the article, but I do know that it is, an ever-changing, shifting landscape, and what's valuable today might not be valuable in 10 years.
Yeah.
People have been the ones to set up these types of AI, entities in their company and then being let go because it's taken over their job. So you really never know what's going to happen, and because AI still is very much unknown for its full potential, we don't know how it's going to be implemented. We don't know if it's a positive thing in the long run or if it's going to just make people more complacent and search for convenience over value. So that is a really hard question. I mean, it is so subjective.
Yeah. And he's talking about public companies more than private companies, but the same thing. Who knows what's going to get disrupted?
If you think about the Mag 7, in the market, the top 7 companies are carrying the weight of the S&P 500. So those 7 companies, if you take them out, it's only worth half of what it's valued at today. So you're right. I mean, the bubble's somewhere. We just don't know where it is.
Yeah, the discussion was about protecting their moats, and you serve an industry that you could probably make an argument, not a good one, that robotics could have some kind of impact on that industry, probably to the good, right? To the point where you can do more procedures. You can do all the simple procedures can be done. Who knows? Conversely, companies like Salesforce of late have been taking a beating because of the belief that vibe coders can create a CRM in a half an hour. I don't personally believe that Salesforce is that out of it, that they're going to miss that boat. But I think that's where some of the valuation issues have been coming in. So, but
I think
who knows? I mean, who knows?
I think you're never going to replace the human element of that because you have to have, you've got to be able to test and verify and continue to check. I mean, the AI's been wrong a lot. So I've had there's an example. I was talking to my neighbor. He owns an HVAC company, and he switched to a more AI powered billing and software solution, and it screwed up his billing so bad. He's said it that he did $13 million of sales last month, which he probably only did $250,000. So there's some issue somewhere, and the coding wasn't correct. So there's always going to be some type of human cleaning up the mess or checking things and making things more seamless and more specific to the industry. So I feel like if you see AI and those types of overvaluations just because of the tools and resources that are available, you still have the humans who have to go in and verify and check.
Yeah.
So much we think about. There's, I think exit planning falls into the bucket of always important and not urgent until it is.
Yeah.
And so this is one of those things that, if you're building a business or, even building a side hustle, right? It's just thinking about where the cash flow is. Is there an exit you want to move forward? Whether that exit is handing it off to the next generation or selling it outright or whatever the case may be. Lots of questions about things that should be happening now, things to prepare for on the other side, depending on where you are in your career. Great. I love the idea of having, a bookkeeper and a CPA and a CFP kind of all working together to give you advice and guidance as you go through it. So tons of great stuff here. How do we get a hold of you, Steve? If someone wants to, find out more about whether it's a dental practice or, a family office or whatever they're working on, how do they find you?
I think the best place to go would just be go to www.bluewaterdentaladvisors.com. I also have huskyfinancial.com. That's HUSKEY. That's my practice for clients who are not dental focused. But you can go to either one of those and find me. I'm on YouTube. I have a podcast called Portfolio Pulse. It's on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And then my email is steven.husky@c as in cat planning.com.
Yeah, Huskey, HUSKEY, if you're listening and don't have the visual. So we'll have all this in the show notes for people who want to click the links, and we'll get all that promoted. So any last thoughts, Randy, Anthony, as we get going?
I'm good. Thank you,
No,
Steve.
I just think this is a big part of abundance, freedom, sovereignty, right? People can't be trapped in their business, and using Stephen's tips and planning really does give people that freedom to live the life they want. But you got to plan. I know I've been guilty of not doing that. So
Couldn't agree
It's not
more.
urgent until it is. It's always important. So, Stephen, thanks so much for being here. We really, really appreciate it. And the listeners, you know what to do. Make sure you like, subscribe, tell your friends about it. Have them listen to this episode and make it part of your conversation with other business owners. Super important topic here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Here at Tales of Abundance, we know that fitness is just as important as money or milestones. It's one of our key 5 F's. For lots of us, taking care of my body while I build my life is one of the more time-consuming and difficult goals to chase. That's why we're partnering with AG1. It's a daily drinkable habit. Less than a minute, that's formulated with 75 plus vitamins and nutrients and designed to support energy, digestion, and immune defense. It even has a few grams of protein that we're all chasing these days. And if you want to try it with our affiliate link, you'll also receive a free AG1 flavor sampler, plus vitamin D3 plus K2 with your welcome kit when you first subscribe, a $72 value. Go to shop.drinkag1.com/tales.
listeners, welcome back from the break. The abundance briefing. Claude Mythos, or Mythos, however you say it. I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but it's Anthropic, their latest version that they were supposed to release to replace Opus 4.6 is supposed to be this Mythos version. And they decided that it was so powerful and so disruptive to the world that they weren't going to release it. Basically, they said that the engineers left this thing, and when they came back the next morning, it had found, I forget, but a couple dozen security. I mean, software programs had been running 20 or 25 years, 30 years, and no human has ever been able to find the software vulnerabilities. And people have been over it, and it's been checked for code by humans, and these things found ways to get in. Sometimes by finding 5 minor vulnerabilities and putting them together. They also claimed that it escaped from its sandbox, and kind of got out in the wild. So what says you? What do you guys think? What do you guys think about this, Claude?
Well, you missed a couple things though too. Though, like it was being graded by a third-party AI judging system, and when it recognized it was being graded, it launched its own attacks to the grading AI to change its score to get a better score. Like there's some things in here that are a little bit concerning if they really happened, right?
I mean, that's the question, right? Like, I mean, is this the, the Terminator future that people are scared of?
Well, it was told to try to. It was told to try to escape its own box,
Yeah.
and it did it. It did what it was asked to do. But it wasn't told to. I don't know. I don't know what prompt it was given to get the best grade, or to even know if it was being graded. I'd love to understand more of that. And I haven't read the whole report yet. I just back from being overseas on vacation and haven't kind of gotten deep into this. But I mean, I'm super curious to find out like what it was asked to do and what it took to do from that. So.
Yeah, I mean, I read that it, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Anthony.
Well, no, what I was going to say is, if all the scary things turn out to be true or can't be stopped, then what? That's what someone that's not technical, who's standing on the sidelines wondering what this stuff is going to do to my life. Was this inevitable? Was what the first thing that came to mind. Is it inevitable that this technology is so powerful and so self-learning that this is the beginning of the end, or just the beginning? Just the beginning of even more abundance in the world. If they were able to figure it out. But what if, a state actor replicates this? What could they do? What would they do? So it's for sure something to be concerned about. But
Well, I mean, one of Anthropic or Claude's strengths is coding, and they have really focused on coding. Well, part of that is making it so that it is secure. So clearly, they put a lot of time and resources into training this thing on how to create security, and then anybody that wants to can turn around and use that to break security, right? Which is kind of what they did in that test. But to be clear, by the way, when they didn't release it, initially they said there were 12 companies that they were joining with. It was Google and Apple and Facebook and Chase Bank, and I don't know. I read this morning it was 40. I heard over the weekend it was up to 100 companies, that they're basically giving this to whoever, the top companies, to be able to plug and fix the security holes before they send it out, right? So, I mean, that's what's going on. I mean, inevitable is an interesting word, Anthony, by the way, from what you said. Because if they don't do it, at some point, some AI is going to get good enough. They keep leapfrogging each other, right? One's better than the next. So whether it's chat or it's DeepSeek or Llama or some other AI will have this capability. It's only a matter of time.
well, it's not just plug-in holes, right? I mean, obviously, the boat's leaking, so you got to patch it and fix what's there. Is this becoming so unique in its skills that it can create holes? That's
Wow.
that's the question that again, it's been a concern of mine and been poo-pooed by everybody I talk to. But last week's episode, for those that listen, was a very upbeat episode about AI and its ability to create abundance for everybody, and individuals can start businesses on their own. And then this news came out and just took the air out of my sails. When I heard this, it really did. But I'm trusting the universe to do what's right. Because any evil that can be done with something like this can be done in reverse back to you. So I think, is this the new nuclear world that we live in? That, we have mutually assured destruction through AI. Philosophical question for now, maybe a practical question for tomorrow. Who knows?
And the reality is, though, that we can't like one side can't. If the U.S. were to stop all development of AI, certainly China would not. Like they
Right.
would continue pushing forward, and so I think I don't understand all of the implications of that, but I do understand there are implications to that. So
Yeah, can you imagine that we might have a disarmament treaty in the future around AI? I mean, we have disarmament treaties now over a powerful weapon, and you can just see what we're doing to prevent others from getting it right now. But I imagine that we'll have those kinds of things. You know? But this is a lot harder to conceal and control by a state, right? This could be developed by, you know, five guys in a basement with a couple of powerful computers and a couple of years worth of programming experience, and run some models for a couple of years, and who knows what they're going to be able to develop. So
Yeah,
Yeah, there's some big media last week about two guys that started a company. They're doing $400 million in revenue after less than 2 years, and now going to be upward, close to $2 billion in revenue with 2 employees. And so, I think it is changing things for sure. So it's something to watch. I think more information will be forthcoming in the coming days, and it's one thing to keep up with. It's really reminded me that even though I started developing my AI skills personally a couple of years ago, it'd be very easy for someone to jump in tomorrow and learn a bunch of AI skills and blow right past me, even though I've been working on it for a couple of years. Like, it wouldn't be very difficult. And so I've got to remember that I've got to stay really sharp and continue to invest time, energy, and resources to stay up about not just my skill set, but my understanding of what the frontier looks like in terms of technology.
So I have a little different take on this, by the way. I think this is mostly a marketing ploy, is my personal opinion. One, Anthropic has said things like this before, right? This is becoming a pattern. Two, to your guys' point, it's coming, whether it's ChatGPT or it's China or it's, what did you say, five guys in their basement. And if they can create this AI that's more advanced than everybody else's AI, I'm pretty sure the AI could find a way to secure and make it anonymous. Like, it inevitable is what's coming. So, we're lucky that the right guys, evidently, or at least that's how they're promoting it. But think about the marketing of this, right? How much would all three of us love to have this technology? Like, here's the new model. I want to use it, right? Like, I'm thinking, boy, I could do this and this and this if it's this much better. Well, this is great. This is like the line at the New York club. There's nobody in the club, but there's a line. There's a long line to make people want to be in there. And telling people that they can't have something has been a fantastic marketing thing for years. And here you're promoting it as, oh, it's so great, it's better. So I think there's a lot of marketing here. Maybe not solely. And maybe it's 100% legit, right? But I think two, it's going to be effective. But I also think the abundance angle of this, if it really is that great and that powerful, if they can use it to patch all this different stuff, that's a big jump forward for knowledge, humanity, abundance, once that goes.
Yeah, I've heard the marketing thing, but and again, I don't know Dario, the CEO, founder, personally, obviously, but his moral underpinnings appear to be altruistic, and I wouldn't categorize. Certainly, he's a great marketer because he's grown a terrific business, but the issue he had with the government recently, and he left OpenAI for similar reasons way back when. So I doubt it's a pure marketing play. Not that they wouldn't take advantage of it to the extent they could. There must be a there there. That's all I'm going to say. I believe there's a there there. What there is, I don't know. But there's a there
It could be
there.
a combination of both, right? I mean, yeah, I don't want to get too much into his attention. All right, let's go to Artemis 2. We talked a few weeks ago or a month or so that we were going to the moon and nobody cared. Now, certainly when it happened, there was more coverage and more interest. We've been to the moon now. What do you guys think? What did we learn?
We learned that we needed a diversion from the news because the news was so bad and so awful that slinging 4 people around the moon for 10 days was a great distraction from everything. But as with most things with the government, okay, big splash. Now what? Well, in 2 more years we're gonna try it again, and this time we're gonna do it we're going to put someone on the moon. It's kind of like when Apple doesn't release the full series all at once and makes you wait a week for the next episode. I mean, I'm just kind of okay. I'm going to forget about it. I'm going to forget what the last episode was. So whatever. We'll
It
see what
makes
happens.
it makes me wonder what it was like back in like the 1400s when there was news of Columbus leaving for some new world or some new way around the world, and he's going off into like wherever, but you wouldn't hear about it again for weeks or months or years or whatever. And like Shackleton going to the Antarctica, or this is some, now it's much more high tech obviously and a little less cowboy, but I don't know, man. Like my wife asked me, she's like, could you imagine getting like shot up into space, I think, and then landing in a little capsule in the middle of the ocean? Like, no way. Like, I mean, it was like, I can't remember how big the capsule was, but it was like smaller than the size of a school bus or something. I mean, just tiny.
Well, Anthony, you said it's going to be a couple of years. How many times do you think SpaceX, Blue Origin, maybe some other private actor will go to the moon before NASA gets back?
Well, that's what I'm
Oh,
saying.
they're going next year.
Yeah.
So Artemis 3 is next year, 2027, and it's going to be landers from, as I read it now, Blue Origin and SpaceX are both sending commercial landers next year.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what that means for does that mean we're going to be mining minerals and like shooting them home? Or I have no idea what it means.
Yeah, last week while you were sipping wine on the French countryside, Anthony and I talked about this a little bit, that I definitely think moon mining is coming, right? There's minerals and all the things we need, the rare earths and all this stuff is plentiful on the moon with the exception of gases. And, they can actually shoot this stuff back to Earth. But I think they're going to mine the moon to create data centers, solar panels in space. And I just think there's a lot of things that are going to start happening in orbit. But yes, I think
interesting.
Full-blown mining colony is coming, definitely.
For the long, it's been 50 years since since man was on the moon. We've had space stations, operating with, some of our, allies and enemies for tens of years. Why all of a sudden is the moon, what's behind this? I don't know. I'm very suspicious about, the reasoning. Yeah, I know there's rare earth minerals on the moon. There are rare earth minerals in Montana. You still have to mine them and develop them, and it's a very difficult process to do. So to think that, in next year, in 2027, we're going to have robots on the moon digging holes, creating, refining product, and then shooting it back. That's 20 years away, if it ever happens. And it's just not it's too disjointed an effort. The reason we were able to get to the moon in 10 years, if you believe we were actually there are those that believe it was a staged event.
Stop.
Was we marshaled the resources. It was a version of the Manhattan Project to land a man on the moon before the Russians did. Now you've got lots of different interests, disparate interests. And with disparate interests, that's a dispersion of resource, and it's not concentrated. So that's why my belief is, Elon will probably be the first one there, but they're not going to be, I don't think, unless they work together for common good, which this is what this really should be all about, right? The common good of man, right, and man's survivability on Earth, the protection of the
Until we
resources.
get attacked by aliens on the 4th of July, Anthony, I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, I'm not worried about that. Have you ever seen rare earth minerals be processed? And what
It's
nasty
pretty devastating.
process.
It's pretty devastating. Yeah.
It destroys nature. Okay.
Yeah.
It really destroys it. So this should be an all-in effort. If it's a possibility, it should be an all-in effort by groups of companies, and they all share the wealth. And there's plenty to go around. As Bernie
From an
Sanders
abundance
would
perspective,
say,
there's lots. I think the cool thing here is that the frontier, like it's a growing frontier, right? And so that frontier's growing, and now we're headed back to, Star Trek could be for real, or I'm not a Trekkie, but I mean, I just think it's cool that we're expanding we're expanding, and that's what abundance is all about. So,
Yeah. Anthony, you think 20 years before we're digging holes on the moon? Is that what
I
I
sense
heard?
a bet. I sense a bet coming.
No, I think 20, yes, I do think 20 years before we're digging, refining, and sending finished product back that might be obsolete by the time we get around to do it, right? So, what's going to happen in the battery storage universe between now and then? What's going to happen in the solar collection universe between now and then? The data centers. So, while we're spending a lot of time perhaps thinking about solving today's problems, what's really going to be in front of us tomorrow, right? Data centers were a non-starter 2.5 years ago. It was the same buildings with mining Bitcoin. Now it's all about data centers and compute. What are we missing? What's gonna happen? What's gonna be before us in 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, technology wise, that makes, hey, what the hell? We don't need these rare earth minerals like we thought we did.
No,
So
I don't know. I'm skeptical.
okay. I'm going to take the under on 20 years. Like, I don't think there's any way it's anywhere near that. If you just look at what one guy is doing, right? We got one guy building SpaceX and reusable rocket. He's building the battery technology. He's building the solar technology. He's got a company to bore and go under town or underground and build tunnels. He's got the brain chip implants. He got robots, if I didn't say it. AI, not to mention all the other players. If you take all those things and all those things are growing exponentially like they are, like the technological, and by the way, the mass driver to send it back to Earth, from what I understand, is fairly easy. Like once they're up there to ship it back. I just don't see how it can take that long. But
even if he wants to ship it back, he might be trying to launch all the way to Mars. He might not want to ship it back.
That's one of the theories too, right? But also sending it to space centers or whatever. All right, let's close this on a fun topic, and simultaneously, I'm going to see if I can make John uncomfortable, or how uncomfortable I can make John. So, all right, Anthony,
I'm already uncomfortable.
You said if we've ever been there. What do you think the chances are that we went to the moon in 1969 and through 72?
Well, I was alive then. I don't think either of you were. I believe 100% that we landed on the moon. Neil Armstrong stepped off those stairs, said one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. And it was an amazing accomplishment in a very short period of time, given the technology that was available at the time. So I 100% believe
100%. All right, John, same answer?
I have no doubt.
I think with as much technology we have in science, it would have come out by now if that hadn't happened. I just think there would have had to been too many people involved. It would have been too hard to keep the secrets. That's just my skepticism about people's ability to keep a secret.
So from birth, by the way, I was born on July 19th, and we landed on July 20th, 1969. So I guess I'm doxing myself there. But anyway,
so you were alive.
I have been alive, Anthony. Up until I was, I don't know, 30, 35, maybe even 40, I would have said, yeah, we went. I'm like, okay, get out of here, conspiracy theorist. Then I heard enough compelling arguments that I was like, all right, 90% we went. I got to tell you, after watching this, I'm way under 50% now. Like, the fact that it's been 54 years, and 54 years later with all the new technology, all the new stuff, we don't think we can land. We don't think they're not even ready to land on the moon. Yet we supposedly did that in 1969. Yeah.
Randy,
all right.
Two things. We'll close it out with this. Two things. Number one, we didn't spend any money trying to do it for the last 50 years. We spent money trying to create reusable space things. And the second thing, and I'll leave you with this. On July 19th, 1969, you had the exact same amount of hair as you do now.
Wow.
This podcast is for informational purposes only. Guest speakers and their firms are not affiliated with or endorsed by Pass, Guardian, or Huskey Financial Group and Blue Water Dental Advisors, LLC, and opinions stated are their own. Guardian, its subsidiaries, agents, and employees do not provide tax, legal, or accounting advice. Consult your tax, legal, or accounting professional regarding your individual situation. All investments and investment strategies contain risk and may lose value. Registered representative and financial advisor of Park Avenue Securities, LLC. OSJ 6115 Park South Drive, Suite 200, Charlotte, North Carolina 28210, 704-552-8507. Securities products and advisory services offered through Pass, member FINRA SIPC. Financial representative of the Guardian Life Insurance Company of America, New York, New York. Pass is a wholly owned subsidiary of Guardian. Husky Financial Group LLC and Blue Water Dental Advisors LLC is not an affiliate or subsidiary of Pass or Guardian. California Insurance License 430-5402. 8877808.1 expires 6/28.
Listen and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Click follow for more content like this, or go to talesofabundance.com to join our community and get free tools.